Pinocchio is out on Disney Plus, directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Tom Hanks, Luke Evans, Cynthia Erivo, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the voice of Jiminy Cricket. It's another one in the long string of Disney-made live-action remakes of old animated classics. Although in the case of Pinocchio, much like with Lion King, calling it live-action is kind of a big stretch. After all, most of the main characters are CG, so are the environments, so it ends up just being a hybrid at best, with actors like Tom Hanks stumbling around an empty room to be filled with digital effects later on. Here's the interesting thing though. Robert Zemeckis is the person who directed Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1988, and that film still stands as probably the most impressive example of blending animation and live action. So in theory, that makes this guy the perfect person to direct Pinocchio with this technique. In practice, this movie inexplicably looks worse than the 34-year-old Roger Rabbit. The CG characters are at best so-so, with Pinocchio himself crossing into that uncanny valley where, he's supposed to look like a wooden puppet, but the smooth edges and this CG animation make him look plastic and artificial. The backgrounds are absolutely horrid. I haven't seen such visibly bad green screens in a very long time. Never once did I believe that the events that were taking place on the screen were actually taking place in the place that they were supposed to, if that makes sense. It was very clear that this was all done on a closed-off studio soundstage. Now, you might say, okay, the visuals are one thing, but perhaps the movie is great otherwise. After all, it is a redo of a story that worked once and then remains working to this day. A cautionary tale about children behaving in good ways. But it isn't. It is lazy, corporate, and soulless, feels just completely hollow and safe and unadventurous. I mean, I maintain my usual position that live-action remakes of these animated classics are proper nonsense. But there is room to do something interesting with it. I mean, just look at Shakespeare, right? People have been adapting his plays for hundreds of years. They continue to do it to this day, and nobody complains about it because each new iteration is different in some ways, different in interpretation of the text, or different in moving into it to a specific time period or a specific setting or something like that. But with Disney, it doesn't really stray from the original in any substantial ways. It doesn't add anything new to the picture other than remaking the story with bad CG instead of beautiful hand-drawn animation. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but as I watched the movie, at no point did I think to myself, wow, this scene looks like the people involved were having loads of fun. There is no moment like this. It's all sterile and lifeless. I honestly wish that Disney stopped altogether making these remakes, but of course they won't until they've made every single film. Some of these remakes are at least average and bearable, but Pinocchio was a pain to watch. It's boring, it's lazy, and it's a film without a trace of heart in it.